Hello, I'm Jonasz Lewiński and this is the Midday Report here on TVP World. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has just kicked off his visit to Berlin. He is meeting with his German counterpart Johann Wadephul to discuss European security and continued support for Ukraine. The trip began with the Polish Foreign Minister's visit to the German Foreign Ministry. Sikorski and Wadephul will later take part in the opening ceremony of the Polish-German Forum at the Polish Embassy in Berlin. The schedule of the visit also includes the presentation of an award recognizing contributions to the development of Polish-German relations. This award honors individuals and institutions promoting dialogue and cooperation between the two countries. Nuclear deterrence is the cornerstone of NATO's security. This is according to NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, who made this statement ahead of the NATO defense ministers' meeting in Brussels on Wednesday.
Nuclear deterrence is the cornerstone of alliance security. And tomorrow this ministerial will conclude with a regular meeting of the Nuclear Planning Group. The fundamental purpose of NATO's nuclear capability is to preserve peace, prevent coercion, and deter aggression. The United States is totally committed to NATO, completely committed to Article 5. Not only because, for historical reasons, not to repeat the mistake after the First World War, when they retreated from the European continent, but also for practical reasons, because to defend the US homeland, they need a secure Atlantic, a secure Arctic, and a secure Europe.
World Bank officials have commenced negotiations in Kyiv with Ukraine's finance ministry on a new loan agreement valued at a minimum of $1 billion. The funding, part of a development policy operation, aims to bolster Ukraine's economic resilience and support key reforms.
The loan, expected to be finalized by November this year, will be provided through the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Last year, Ukraine received approximately $3.5 billion under similar agreements, which supported reforms in tax policy, state-owned enterprises, and the banking and energy sectors. The new DPO funds will be disbursed to Ukraine's general state budget once agreed reform milestones are met.
Wednesday marks International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky took to social media to call on the world to honor the memory of the children killed by Russian strikes and shelling in Ukraine, stressing that only global solidarity will help hold Russia accountable for its actions.
Boys and girls whose lives were cut short by Russian strikes and shelling, by hostilities that Ukraine never wanted for even a second, but from which we have been forced to defend ourselves for years already. It is on June the 4th that we honor the memory of all these children. In memory of every child killed, in memory of every human life destroyed, there must be real global solidarity from all across Europe, all across the US and all other parts of the world, so that Russia is held accountable for its actions and is forced to return the peace it stole from Ukraine and Ukrainians.
Russia must be forced to stop the killing and begin genuine peace efforts, announced Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha in a social media post. He also called on all allies to put additional pressure on Moscow so that the war ends as soon as possible.
Russia killed at least 631 Ukrainian children and injured 1,971 others in the course of its aggression against Ukraine. This loss causes incomprehensible pain. The world cannot forget or forgive such crimes. There must be justice for the innocent young lives that have been cut short by Russia's criminal aggression. This tragic date reminds us why this war must be put to an end as soon as possible, and why Russia must be forced to stop the killing and begin genuine peace efforts. Because Moscow currently continues to reject a full ceasefire and stall the peace process, I urge all partners to apply additional pressure, including new, strong sanctions.
Russia launched yet another drone and missile attack on Ukraine overnight, targeting the Kharkiv and Sumy regions. The Russian strike sparked multiple fires in a residential building, a warehouse, and a gas station in the city of Kyiv, as well as outside the city in the village of Tserkuny. At least one person was wounded as a result. In Sumy, a large-scale blaze broke out in the city of Lebedin, damaging 10 homes. According to Ukraine's state emergency service, rescuers and firefighters were dispatched to the scenes to put out the fires and search the affected buildings to make sure nobody was trapped beneath the rubble. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, in its overnight attack, Russian forces used 95 Shahed strike UAVs alongside various decoy drones. Ukraine has managed to down 61 of them. Tensions are on the rise in Brussels as the European Union's biggest buyers of Russian liquefied natural gas push back against a proposed bloc-wide ban. France and Belgium, the top two importers, are refusing to endorse the European Commission's plan to phase out Russian gas by 2027. Both countries say they need more clarity on the legal and economic fallout before signing on. Paris prefers a strategy of diversification, pointing to new supply deals with Qatar. Belgium, meanwhile, is demanding a full impact assessment before making any commitments. That stance puts them at odds with Spain and the Netherlands, who say they are ready to back the ban and cut ties with Russian energy as soon as possible. Together, the four countries account for nearly all of the EU's Russian LNG imports, worth over 6 billion euros last year. Getting them all on board is seen as critical for the Commission's proposal, which is expected next month. US President Donald Trump has announced a sharp increase in tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. Starting on Wednesday, those tariffs will double, rising from 25% to 50%. The United Kingdom is the only exception, which will continue under the existing 25% rate.
President Trump made the announcement during a visit to U.S. Steel in Pennsylvania last week, saying the higher tariffs are necessary to stop what he called unfair dumping of cheap metal into the U.S. market, a practice he says is hurting American workers and manufacturers. The United States is the world's largest importer of steel, with about a quarter of its supply coming from abroad, mainly from Canada, Mexico, Japan, South Korea and Germany.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%.
The increased tariffs pose an additional threat to Ukraine's critical metallurgical exports, which are already under significant strain due to the ongoing war. According to the country's economy minister, metallurgical products account for almost 60% of Ukraine's total exports to the United States, amounting to over $500 million annually.
President of Romania, Nicu Jordan, has held his first press conference after assuming office last week. Speaking to journalists, he outlined the priorities of his presidency, including reducing the country's budget deficit, fighting corruption, and continuing to provide Ukraine with aid.
What I want to convey to Romanians, and especially to the financial environment, is that we are serious. That is, we are aware that Romania has a deficit that is not sustainable at this moment, and that we are serious about reducing it. I said this and I stand by it. I am not at all satisfied with the anti-corruption process. There are entire areas of corruption that are neglected by the Romanian state. As soon as we finish with this issue of the deficit and the formation of the government, the justice issue will be my main concern. I think it is important that the state authorities and obviously the president explain to the Romanian people that the security of Ukraine is a matter that affects the security of Romania itself, as well as Moldova. We must say this and repeat it as often as necessary.
In the Netherlands, Geert Wilders withdrew from the government coalition following a row over migration because he didn't want to raise taxes to increase the country's defense spending. That's according to Dutch MP Jan Paternotte, who joined TVP World to explain the reasons for the collapse of the Dutch government.
At the NATO summit, the Netherlands will have to commit to 3.5% in defense spending. 3.5% of our economy has to be spent on defense. In Poland, for example, it's already plans to get to 5%, but the Netherlands is currently at 2%. So this means 16 to 17 billion euros extra in defense spending, which we'll have to come from either cutting taxes or cutting spending or raising taxes. And the sense among many is that Geert Wilders simply didn't want to cut spending, but also didn't want to raise taxes, and that's why he got out of the coalition.
Around 20,000 residents are being evacuated from central Cologne in what has become the city's largest post-war evacuation, following the discovery of 3 unexploded World War II-era bombs. The discovery prompted authorities to establish a 1,000-meter exclusion zone encompassing parts of the old town.
The operation has forced the temporary closure of 9 schools, 58 hotels, a hospital, and even the area surrounding Cologne's iconic cathedral. City officials are conducting door-to-door checks to ensure all buildings are cleared. 2 emergency shelters have been set up for displaced residents. The bombs are remnants of the intense Allied bombing campaigns during World War II. Experts estimate that up to 20% of the 1.5 million bombs dropped on the city failed to detonate. In 2024 alone, 31 unexploded bombs were found in the city, triggering 17 evacuations and affecting over 36,000 people.
Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has congratulated Karol Nawrocki on winning the Polish presidential election. Sikorski also said that the Foreign Ministry will support Nawrocki throughout his presidency, mentioning that the ministry has already intervened when the Times of Israel called the president-elect a Holocaust revisionist.
I'd like to congratulate Karol Nawrocki on winning the presidential election. The Foreign Affairs Ministry will support him throughout his mission, of course, just as we are already protesting against the article in the Israeli press.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.